Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host, Orlando Haynes, and each and every week, I bring you amazing guests with actionable advice for your career and life. Yes, it is a Tuesday night. I had to pivot, wasn't feeling too well yesterday, but luckily enough, my amazing guest was able to flex with me. So we're excited to bring you a Tuesday night episode here on the Career Talks podcast. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribing. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Support. Follow me and all my guests here on LinkedIn so we can continue to share some amazing career advice. So I had the opportunity to be on Miss Gillies' platform a few months back. She is an entrepreneur, a career coach, a podcast host. The name of her podcast is Destination Dream Job. And I'll share that episode later. But tonight is her night here on the Career Talks podcast. So let me bring on Miss Steph Gillies. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. So share with the folks more about who Steph is and your business and background.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is I had 32 jobs in 15 years. So I got really good at applying for jobs. I ended up graduating with a social work degree and worked in the nonprofit field for many years. But I was laid off during the pandemic, and it was kind of an opportunity for me to make a decision about what I wanted to do next. And I had previously certified as a resume writer and interview coach. And so I thought, hey, why not give it a shot? And that was 4 years ago. I've been full-time in my business since then. I've written over 1,000 resumes and coached hundreds of people through their job search. I focus mainly on career transitions and helping people create a story that really reflects who they are and brings that authenticity into their brand so that when they are applying for jobs, they feel like they're bringing themselves to the table.
1,000 resumes?
Well, more than that. I stopped counting at 1,000, yes.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I would say I've definitely looked at over 1,000 resumes throughout my career, but oh my God, written and reworked and re-strategized 1,000 resumes. That is a lot. So definitely appreciate you being here tonight, Steph, and again, being flexible for the one-day shift. So super appreciative of yours for your flexibility. But folks, make sure, before I forget again, make sure you go and check out Destination Dream Job podcast on Apple, etc., Spotify, etc. Definitely support. So you mentioned in your intro just there, bringing authenticity to your brand and career and job search. So what does that specifically mean to you? And if, coming from you and how you think and your methodology, what does that mean?
I think the world of, because I've been writing resumes for quite a while, the world of resume writing has changed so much. In the past several years, it's just been, the job search has been so much more competitive than it has been before. And so like 5 years ago, the advice I would give you for writing a resume would be completely different to the advice now. Like 5 years ago, I would say, you don't want to include anything personal in there. It's a formal document, just include only your work stuff. And now, I really focus on bringing that authenticity, which means, talking about things that are maybe not necessarily relevant to the job search, but helps you to set you apart. For example, I worked with someone who was in sales and was also an Ironman triathlete. And so we included that in his resume to showcase his dedication and his ability to follow through on things and really, make an impact at work because he has this hobby on the side that takes up, makes him show up with a lot of dedication. And so that kind of really helps him stand out. So in a sea of thousands of resumes that sometimes hiring managers are getting, at least 500, 250 to 500 is like the minimum right now. When you talk about those things that make you different, when you really lean into who you are and the things you're passionate about, that can help you stand out a little bit more when a hiring manager is just looking at a piece of paper.
So where was that moment in your career making that transition from an employee to entrepreneur, but you had that epiphany? I always ask this question because I always want to hear the journey where you said, okay, I got to bring or be more authentic in my career search or my transition. What was that moment for you?
That's a great question. I think it happened probably like 2 years ago. When I first started my business, it was just something like, oh, I'll just do this for now, and see where it goes. But
Hmm.
it got busy really quickly, and I ended up, taking off a lot more than I expected it to. And so that's why I'm still here 4 years later. But when I first started it, it was just, writing resumes. It was just helping people edit and write resumes. That's really all it was about. And honestly, I was contracting with an agency at the time as well. And someone reached out to me and said, like, hey, I think you'd make a really good coach. Have you ever considered coaching? And I was like, no, I've never considered coaching. Like, I don't think I could do that. And they were like, let's just give it a try. Like, come coach with us and just see how it goes. And so I was like, okay, I'm not one to usually say no. I usually say yes to most opportunities and then see where it leads from there. And so I said yes, went for it. And that was, I really felt like someone saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. And so that opened up, a world of possibilities. And then I started coaching with them for a while and, build up my confidence a little bit, and then started coaching more with my own clients. And then that really made me realize, how important when you spend more time talking to people rather than just writing resumes, you realize how much people feel like they have to hide themselves in their job search, right? They think, okay,
Mm.
like this is what they want me to be. So how can we write my resume to make it sound like this is what they want me to be? And but what I've really found talking to people on both sides of the table, the recruiters and the hiring managers, as well as the job seekers, is they really prefer people who are different, who stand out, who make an impact, and have a resume that looks a little bit different. And so that's when I started building that into my own brand and building it more on who I was and sharing about the 32 jobs in 15 years. I was very embarrassed about that in the very beginning. And I was like, I'm never going to tell people that. And now it's just funny. I think it's really hilarious. And so I think that really helped me to lean into more of my authenticity as well when I was helping other people, lean into theirs.
So I'm sure people will be who are watching now or catching the replay or listening this to on other platforms, and they want to say, okay, how do I bring? She said you had someone who was a triathlon or an athlete, and they brought that into resume. So their question is, okay, how do I do that? What's that infusion? What's that crossroad? What does that look like? Me bringing my more personal self, tying it into my professional work.
hmm It's really about thinking about what sets you apart. That's the first part of it is, what makes you different. I mean, we're not all going to be Ironman triathletes. I know I
Mhm.
sure am not one. And so it doesn't need to be something that big or that monumental, right? It can be something like I worked with someone recently who had worked, in multiple different countries. And so that was something that set them apart. So they were based in North America, but their experience had been across the globe. They had lived and worked in many different countries. And so that was something that would really set them apart from someone who maybe was born and raised in North America, wouldn't see the same perspectives as this person would see. Or, people who are immigrants to the country, they bring a different perspective, a new perspective. And so instead of trying to hide that, which a lot of people tend to be like, I don't know if I should talk about that. Like, I want to showcase that I'm here and this is what I'm doing now, is really leaning into that and showing how it's a benefit. I work with a lot of people who also consider themselves generalists or multi-passionates, and their resumes tend to be a little messier. They might go to multiple
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
jobs. They might have had short stints at an organization and then moved on to something else. And then they feel like, oh, I'm not an expert in anything. How can I show this on a resume? But really what that does is it shows that, you have multiple different skill sets. You have transferable skills. You can bring that outside perspective into this new industry or this new organization. And so thinking about, those things that maybe were hard or frustrating for you in your past and reframing them in a way that can be positive and that can, showcase some strengths and some skills that you've gained from that experience.
So let's get a little granular for the folks again. I love how you just explained that for sure. Where would you put that verbiage in? Right? Is that in the summary? Is there pockets of throughout? You write a summary before your job duties. How would you place that in the resume again? Because I think that's it's. I don't think I've seen a resume that had more of the personal piece. It always came out through through the interview and conversation, but to see it in the resume, I think that would be pretty cool too if it when it's well crafted by yourself. So what does that look like in placement on the resume?
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways that you can do it. Sometimes I will include it right at the top in that career summary paragraph that you start with,
Mhm.
depending on what it is and whether it's, we can make it relevant to the job. We'll include it right there at the very top. Sometimes you can include like an interest or like a other section at the bottom where you can talk about, other extracurriculars that you have. And then also, sometimes if you're not feeling like it's going to fit in the resume and it's just feeling out of place, the cover letter or your LinkedIn profile are great places to talk more about those things because your brand doesn't all have to show up directly on the resume. That is the main piece that people look at when you're applying online. But there's also, the opportunity to share things in the cover letter as well as your LinkedIn profile because 87% of recruiters go to LinkedIn anyways once they've reviewed your resume. And so that's a great place to talk more about that personal stuff if you're just feeling like you can't quite weave it into that resume. So it really depends on each situation and what the target jobs are and whether or not you can kind of make it fit.
You mentioned cover letters, and I'm gonna pivot real quick on that just to get your your perspective on that. Are cover letters still warranted in today's job market?
So that's a great question. Austin Belkak, he's on LinkedIn. He's an influencer in the career
Hmm.
space. He did a study, and I don't know the exact numbers, so I will just forgive me for the exact numbers. But he did a study that said 70 something percent of hiring managers don't read cover letters, but I think it was 53% prefer candidates who submit a cover letter.
Mm.
So go figure, right? You need to have a cover letter, but nobody wants to read it. So yes, I still think it's important to have a cover letter, but do I think you should spend a lot of time on it? No, I don't think you should. Unless it's a job that you're really excited about and you really want to showcase your passion or excitement for the position. Or, if it's a smaller organization, a startup, mission driven companies, they tend to focus more on reading the cover letter to see, if your passion matches up with what they're doing, what their mission
Mhm.
is. And so those can be different situations where a cover letter might be more valuable. But most of the time, if you have a generic cover letter that you're using, you can submit that along with your application. That should be fine.
Good. That's what I thought. So yeah, because I tell people still it doesn't hurt. And as a recruiter, I'm like, most recruiters don't read it now. We'll glance over it real quick, but if it's required, definitely it doesn't hurt to send it each time. It's up to you. It's up to
Mhm.
you. It's your call, but it's not going to hurt you to have a cover letter. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
when it comes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it just shows that you go one step above. If there's 100 applicants and 10 of them submit a cover letter, it shows that you maybe took that extra step.
Correct. Correct. So with that, what are some other areas in the job search where you're able to bring your authentic self to stand out in that process?
Well, definitely in the interview stage, that is a great opportunity to show, who you are and how you're different. A lot of people will spend so much time prepping for their interview answers and memorizing them, and then they'll come in and it's a little bit more robotic when you've memorized your answers. And so, what I
Yeah.
really recommend people do is bullet out your answers, like create your stories, bullet them out, and practice them, and know that every time you share them, they're not going to be the same because when you memorize them it
Mhm.
just brings a different it brings a different like energy to the interview. And when you can talk, keep it more conversational, it tends to show your personality shows a lot more. I was doing some interview coaching with someone today and I was just 20 minutes into the call and he was like, so what do you think? And I was like, well, so far what I've got from you is you seem to be very relatable. You seem to be someone who's easy to get along with and someone who would work well on a team. I was like, do you think those things are accurate? And he's like, yes. I was like, well, then your personality is coming across in the way you're answering these questions, because in those 15-20 minutes people should be able to identify what you'd be like as a person and who you are, and that only comes when you show up as yourself and answer these questions truthfully. I'm sure you've experienced lots of people
Mhm.
who are like, oh, I'll just make up the answer. It doesn't matter. I'll just lie to get to tell them what they want to hear. And I mean, people do that. I mean, that's your call. But at the end of the day, is that really going to show who you are as a person? Are they really going to get that feel for, who you would be at work and how you'd be to work with? So,
Yeah, I wish there were more managers too that took that interview process more on a conversational, um, you know, kind of framework there instead of the old traditional way. Ask questions, get answer, move to the next section, ask questions, move answer, and that becomes very robotic. And so it's if you're skilled, I would say, or get trained at interviewing both for the interviewer and interviewee, I think that just makes it for a better, true conversation when the hiring manager or whoever, the recruiter, does take that approach and say, hey, let's just have a conversation about, the company, the skills, what you're looking for, just to see if it's a good fit. And then that same kind of theme and core value transitions over. I think those are the ones that it makes it more comfortable. You definitely get a stronger buy-in from a candidate experience if they feel like, wow, like my personality came through, but so did Steph as the hiring manager. I would really like to work with her. She may not be the direct hiring manager, but I just enjoyed our conversation. If the next person is like that, the company must be pretty cool. Like the people must be pretty cool. And so I think managers should take a key note too in really developing how they speak to candidates and just take it more conversational. What are your thoughts in that aspect there?
Yeah, I think that's definitely it makes a huge difference when it's more conversational. And job seekers can take a little bit of control on that if they ask questions after their answers. So instead of just waiting for the hiring manager to ask you a question, it would be about, asking them a question. They say, "Tell me about yourself." You tell them about yourself, and then you say, "What projects are you guys working on right now that you're really excited about?" And try to create that conversational aspect to it. I once was at an interview, and I love this story because this is exactly what you're saying. I went to an interview at an organization, and after the interview was fine, and then after the interview, they gave me a tour, and they took me down to this like basement that had no windows, and everyone was sitting at their cubicle with their heads down. Nobody looked, no one was smiling. Everyone was just like at their cubicle, and they're like, "So this is the dungeon." They called it the dungeon. They're like, "This is the dungeon where you'd be working." And these are all like the people you'd be working with. And then they explained a little bit about the day to day. And I was just like, nope, can't do it. I can't do it. I was like, this is terrible. So I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way I could ever take this job. And so I don't remember if I got called back for a second interview or not. I just remember after going down to the dungeon, I was like, no way. So that goes to show, right? Like even giving people a tour or giving them an opportunity to see what the workplace is like can help people, make a better decision on whether or not it would be the right role for them.
It's funny you say that because I recall, yeah, years ago when I stepped into staffing and recruiting 20 years ago, is that exact same thing happened in terms of the tour. So it was a half day. I think some companies are still doing that too, obviously, but it was definitely a half day. I got a chance to go in, meet with the managers, sit with the recruiters, see them make calls, see what we call the open pit, and see just what the energy was like. And in my case, it was great, right? But I think if in your scenario, if that was like a prank for people coming in, that would have been pretty cool to be like, oh wow, so this is a fun group, you guys, to get your first expression to be like the dungeon, like, oh no, people are like, are they chains? Are they locked into their cubicles? Like, what's happening here? And if that was more of a prank, just to get your sense of like, see how this person reacts, that would have been really cool. But for that to be the actual environment, yeah, that's not good at all. Not good at all.
I don't know if it was a prank, it was lost on me. I was like,
Yeah.
I can't get out of here fast enough, I'll tell you.
Let me switch this up for you, and because I always like to get perspective from my guests, both from what the job seeker should do and also what the employer should do. If you had a room of hiring managers, how would you engage them or coach them also to be more authentic in that in that communication or presentation with job seekers during the interview process?
Hmm. That's a great question. I mean, there's so many options, so many things that hiring managers can do. Whether they're allowed to do them at their work is like a different conversation. But
Hmm.
I've some of my clients have been gone on lunch date interviews where they just go
Hmm.
for lunch and have a conversation, and they said those have been the most impactful, both on the hiring manager side as well as the job seeker side, because they really got to understand what the company was like, what the position was like. And then the hiring manager really got to know that person as a human being and what it would be like to work with them in that situation, more than just sitting in a room and asking and answering questions. And I think that, another thing that hiring managers can do is really open it up to a conversation. If they can't, take them off site or do something else, is they, in the interview room, open it up as a conversation rather than, okay, I'm going to ask you 7 questions. Then you're going to have 5 minutes to ask questions. And then we're going to wrap this up. Right? Because that's very formal. That's not very inviting. That's not very exciting for people to come into. And so when you start it with like, this is meant to be a conversation, we just want to get to know you and you can get to know us. So feel free to ask questions throughout, even just having that preface it really helps to set the stage for a more conversational and a more interesting interview. And I think that that really impacts, the job seeker's nerves as well. So then what they can show up more as themselves and they can feel more comfortable in that type of situation.
Yeah. Yep. Love that. Love that. Walk us through your process as a new job seeker comes to you for help. Give them a glimpse of what that looks like in working with Steph Gillies.
Yeah. So I usually do a brief couple of sessions on career direction, because writing a resume when you don't have a career direction is pretty challenging. And so we will talk about, that career clarity and what kind of skills they really like and they want to keep in their next position. And we'll do that because after I've written so many resumes, people can tell me what they like to do and I can see, at least 3 to 5 jobs that will work out for them. And then that gives them an opportunity to then go and do some research and do some informational interviews and see which ones kind of match up with what they want their lifestyle as well as what they want their skills to be on a day-to-day basis. And then we go through, I have a 1-hour session where I go through the background of their resume, where I talk to them about their accomplishments and all the different things that might need to be included in that resume process. And then I rewrite their resume. And then after that, we usually do, some job search strategy, interview coaching, different things like that, LinkedIn training so that they can really effectively use their LinkedIn profile so that they're really set up for the job search. So essentially when they come to me, they can, it's start to finish for their job search and they can, feel really confident about going into those next stages.
Share with the folks something that most job seekers are not doing or utilizing when it comes to leveraging their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, well, most people aren't using it at all. So I think that, being engaged at all on the platform.
There you go, folks.
Most people create a profile and they set it up and they just leave it, right? And they're like, oh, well, we'll just see what happens. And I mean, that's fine. It's better than nothing, right? Having a profile is really good as long as you have, all the sections filled out for your profile. But the key is the LinkedIn algorithm prefers people who are active on the platform. And so that doesn't mean that you have to post yourself, but, commenting on other people's posts, connecting with people, whether you know them or not, and then having genuine connections and conversations in the DMs is really important. So not sending them some pitch like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you hire me? Having a true, genuine conversation with people. LinkedIn really, like the algorithm really likes those kinds of things and shows that you're now friends with these people. And then it shows your profile up more in searches. And so really being active on that platform. And it doesn't mean that you have to do this like every day you have to connect with 5 people. It doesn't have to be that, intense. But if you show, if you show up weekly, connect with 3 people a week, send a couple of messages a week, the LinkedIn algorithm can see that consistency and then you'll start to show up in more searches. And that can be, really helpful for your profile.
Yeah, it's so weird. I see a lot of posts now that are coming out and saying that the algorithm is kind of suppressing the impressions on there. I made a post, a work post about an event we did, a career fair we went to, and it got at like 10,000 plus impressions. It's personal stuff, something else, 400. I'm like triggered. No, who knows? But definitely that advice. Same question, but in the job search efforts now. what are some job seekers not doing that you're noticing that's kind of like a common theme?
hmm I think the thing that people struggle with the most is that networking piece. People are comfortable applying
Mm,
online because it's easy, to submit your resume to an online application, but it's a lot harder to network. One of my clients, it went for a job interview just last week for this organization that he's been interested in for a while. And the way he got the interview was he noticed that this company put on a public event to play pickleball, so he went and played pickleball, and his pickleball partner was the CEO of the company. And so he talked to him. He wasn't there to be like, I need a job, but he was like, the guy asked him, he's like, oh, so what are you doing right now? And he's like, oh, actually, I'm making a pivot, into this new industry. And, this organization has been one that I've followed for many years. So I'm excited to be here and meet you guys. And, one day maybe that would work out that we could work together. And the CEO was like, well, we have an open job. Why don't you interview for it? And so, that was a huge piece. So networking can be online through LinkedIn, or it can be in person,
wow.
like this client of mine who went to a pickleball tournament and got an interview.
Yeah, people are like, what city and state was this in, and what what pickleball event? I'm heading over there to try to run into the same CEO. That's amazing. Like, what is the likelihood of you partnering with the CEO of a company and sparking up a conversation about a career pivot? Like, that's so
Yeah,
rare.
totally,
But
for
that's,
sure.
to your point, that shows the power. Yeah, yeah, it shows the power of the network piece. And so hopefully folks are listening to you and they're like, all right, let me get out my shell, let me get out, the get out of fear and thinking it's going to be bad. And still you have to go in it with a plan. But this person just showed up at a non, business event. It was just to go play pickleball, and look what happened there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm. I know we're going to be closing out pretty soon here. Share with us some other things that I didn't get a chance to ask you that job seekers should be aware of when it comes to bringing their authentic self to their job search, whether it be the resume again, or LinkedIn, or interview, or the networking piece. What are some hidden tricks that you or secrets that you're uncovering that you can share?
Yeah, I think it's really around figuring out, that part that thing that sets you apart. Oftentimes, when I
Hmm.
ask people that question, they find it really, really challenging to answer because they're like, I don't know what sets me apart. I'm just an average guy or an average gal just going to work. And so, the ways that you can do that is really figure out what sets you apart is to talk to your friends and family, see if they, anything that they know your strengths are. Look back on any previous performance evaluations or performance reviews and see what your hiring the manager said about you in those performance reviews, or how you helped the team, or what accomplishments you had. And then obviously you can always get a coach. A coach can help you to figure out what those strengths might be, and what you can help to really showcase what makes a difference in the workplace. And then those are some things that you can then bring to the interview. So when they ask you the question, why should we hire you over someone else? It's not like, uh-oh, how do I answer that? Right? You know what sets you apart, and you've done your homework on that, and you're able to answer that question with confidence. So I would say do your homework on what sets you apart, because that can be the catalyst to writing your resume, creating your LinkedIn profile, and preparing your interview answers.
Awesome. Awesome. Steph, before we close out, I have two final questions for all my guests. One is, what makes you get up and do what you do every day?
Hmm. I just love helping people build that authenticity into their resume, into their LinkedIn profile. A lot of times people feel like they have to hide themselves, and I want people to, embrace who they are and bring that into their not only their job search, but then also their job once they get it, and not feel like they have to hide who they are at work, because we spend like
Mm,
30% of our time at work. And so if you have to hide yourself at work, it's going to be exhausting. And so really bringing that authenticity is why I do what I do.
love it. Lastly, is, do you have a personal mantra that you live by?
Oh, that's a tough one. I have my values. I have 3 values that I live by, and so I think
Mm-hmm.
those would be the ones that I would stick with. And so they're authenticity, obviously, adventure, and freedom. So, I
Mm.
really valued going and doing new things. I think I love to try new things and have new adventures. And then the freedom piece is, why I decided to go into entrepreneurship and, spend more time, working for myself, working from home. I'm sure you've probably heard my kiddos in the background. They're a little bit loud right now, but that's why I work from home so that I can have that freedom to be there for them when they need it. So that is why would be my values.
Awesome. I love those. I love those. I may have to adopt it or call you and walk through those with you. And I may have to definitely engraft that into mine for sure. So I appreciate that. But Steph, I so appreciate you coming on, being able to pay it forward and have you on my platform, having your insight. Love the conversation. Learned a lot about your thought process, which is definitely unique, which I like. Definitely unique. So I appreciate that you sharing with the folks. Any last final words of advice or motivation you want to drop in for the folks?
Yeah, I would just say to be yourself, when you're in the job search, don't try to hide who you are and really embrace that and bring it into your job search. It's worth it. It makes it a lot more fun.
And I keep saying this, I lied. I forgot the last question is real. Share with folks where they can find you, consume your content, connect with you, and work with you as their coach.
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, so it's just my name, Steph Gillis, or my website is destinationdreamjob.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. Make sure, folks, that you're following Steph Gillis on her podcast and LinkedIn. Connect with her, get your authentic self together, and land the job you need. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on the Career Talks podcast.